Ladies and gentlemen, Gun Criminal here. I've just finished watching Jordan Owen 42's The Kent Hovind of Feminism series, which I'd recommend, and rather coincidentally I've also finished viewing the website of someone who also has some rather bizarre views on sexuality. This is Jack Fresco, founder of the highly popular Venus Project, who envisions what is basically a centralised, moneyless, work-free, automated society which will be built somehow, and in this society you can have whatever you want, as there'll be limitless abundance of power and natural resources, or so he tells us anyway. It'd take a long time for me to explain and fisk all of the holes in this Venus project, so I'll just stick with the one that I find to be the most obviously wrong. Fresco, you see, is probably what we'd call a materialist. He believes that all of the problems that societies face, apparently without exception, are caused by lack of resources. If someone steals your car, for instance, the thief did it because of lack of resources to get his own, presumably. You get your head kicked in over a football match, lack of resources is to blame for that too. Someone flies a plane into a building, lack of resources. Someone's raping your daughter, lack of resources again, I assume. No, I'm not ridiculing the Venus Project. The people who adhere to Fresco's philosophy do actually believe this. I mean, what logical path exists between material deprivation and one's sexual preferences is never actually explained. The closest I came to achieving an answer can actually be found on the Venus Project's website, at the end of their frequently asked questions section. I'm going to read it out to you, and the question is actually, what are the views of sex in the Venus Project? And Fresco, he's replied to this question. I'll read it out to you, and you can see how completely screwed up, pun intended, how screwed up his response actually is. Okay, here we go. What are the views of sex in the Venus Project? We view the facts of sex are as follows. Oh, right. If children are raised in an environment where nude swimming is the norm, then their sexual attitudes and behaviours will evolve differently than in situations where their bodies are always covered and hidden. Aberrant sexual behaviour and fetishes would probably disappear in cultures where unclothed bodies are regarded as natural. Oh, right. Deviant sexual behaviours like peeping toms, selling nudity in magazines, exhibitionism and similar activities are mostly generated in societies where sex is covert and people are uptight about it. Right, I'll stop there for a moment. The first question is, what constitutes deviant behaviour? Is it just behaviour that differs from the societal norm? I mean, he says aberrant sexual behaviour. I mean, is that sexual behaviour that people just don't like? I mean, it used to be the case in ancient Greece where homosexuality was quite alright, and then as we moved into the Christian-dominated era, it suddenly became horrific and a sin and depraved, etc., etc. But nowadays it's generally considered okay. So, I mean, really, there's no correlation between some uptight society and the appearance of sexual deviation. Well, like I say, I don't actually know what how he defines deviant behaviour, because he doesn't actually say. Now, of course, me being an advocate of a free society, I believe that nudity should be legal in the public domain, as it doesn't violate the non-aggression principle, basically. But having said that, I am not an advocate of nudity, nor do I ever envision it becoming a norm. There's hygiene issues with people walking around nude, and if you're like me, you live in the UK, you'd probably freeze to death very quickly without adequate clothing. I mean, that is why early man began wearing clothes in the first place, made of animal skins and that, because he got cold, not because he wanted to inflict some prudish view of sexuality onto people. Alright, well, anyway, let's continue. He goes on to say this. Unfortunately, much religious training seeks to perpetuate conventional sexual attitudes with particular emphasis on feelings of guilt. Societies which accept unscientific values and beliefs about sex are bound to generate unhealthy deviations involving cruelty, sadism, etc. Now, keep that last sentence in mind. I'm going to carry on. Keep that last sentence in mind. Sexual attitudes and behaviours in a saner society will evolve very differently from conventional societies today. We think nudity will become more commonplace on beaches, parks and elsewhere, and that this will, in fact, become the norm in the future. Non-judgmental attitudes about sexual preference will eventually prevail. Now wait a minute. What about people whose sexual preferences involve cruelty and sadism? Why are we referring to them as unhealthy and deviant in one sentence, and then the next sentence that we ought to be non-judgmental about people? I mean, this is a contradiction, isn't it, really? And what about, say, paedophiles going about their business? Will no one want to judge them at all? I mean, it doesn't really matter anyway, because there won't be a lot we can do about it, because Fresco's utopia doesn't have any laws and no one to enforce them, even if it did, public or private. And judging from his pacifist stance, I don't think there's going to be any guns available, so well, okay. Sex in magazines will lack inhibition, thus reducing the interest in dancing girls, enticing displays, sexual extravagance, etc. Sexual distortions and abnormalities resulting from judgmental religious concepts regarding nudity and sexual preference. And again, contradiction in the same bloody sentence, talking about sexual distortions and abnormalities while claiming that people should be non-judgmental about it. I'll leave aside the fact that the statement about religion's bullshit as well. I mean, I know a lot of people with weird fetishes who are neither religious nor materially deprived to any significant degree, so okay. Jack Fresco, founder of the Venus Project, presumably he's talking in the third person here. Alright, Jack Fresco, founder of the Venus Project, once lived on a Polynesian island in the South Pacific, where the natives wore no clothing. This was associated with a completely different value system concerning sex and nudity. Well, if they went around nude all the time, they obviously didn't associate nudity with sex. They did not behave like people do in a sexually warped or uptight culture. And so here's more judgmentalism. No, wrong. A society is not sick or warped because it associates nudity with sex. Nor is the opposite true either. I mean, provided the people involved in whatever sexual activity that takes place are consenting adults, none of this crap matters. Right. The males didn't stare at the female body, but rather looked into their eyes when speaking to them. I mean, that happens in our culture as well. We generally look at people's faces when we're talking to them, But well, yeah, okay. Well, nudity is the norm in this Polynesian island, presumably, and they obviously don't associate nudity with sex. And people, as a rule, tend to stare at things that are unusual. And in my society, a nudist is unusual and is going to get stared at in public. It's just the way things are. During sex, they stroke the entire body, and so do a lot of people in our culture as well. But if you're trying to argue that our culture is somehow deviant, which once again begs the question, deviant by what standard? Because we generally focus on the genitals rather than the whole body, then I'm sorry, but that's bullshit. I mean, you know, when you masturbate, Jack, do you stroke your entire body or just certain parts of it? I mean, you're gonna have difficulty having sex with someone or replicating the act of intercourse without the genitals being involved somehow. And I'm sorry to say that the Polynesian friends are no different. I'm not going to go any further with this. I mean, I should have to teach someone old enough to be my grandfather about the birds and the bees. I mean, alright, he goes on, and this is where it really starts to get worrying. When you pet a dog, you don't just pet the balls, you stroke the entire dog. Look, I'm really not sure you ought to be telling me this, Jack. I mean, right. So when you're petting a dog, you stroke the entire dog, and you stroke it. Do you stroke its balls as well? I mean, well, that's what it says. You don't just pet the balls. I mean, you see, I'm a bit different, and I think I speak for the majority of people in every culture on Earth. I mean, I'm not into bestiality, so when I stroke a dog, it's because I want to show it some platonic affection, and I don't stroke a dog because I want to shag it. Now, I'm not trying to sort of arouse it sexually. I just want to show it a bit of affection, you know, and when I do show said affection, I don't pet its balls at all. In fact, I specifically avoid its balls. And like I said, I suspect everyone else is the same. And presumably these people in Polynesia, do they stroke the dog's balls as well when they're petting dogs? I mean, well, whatever. I don't believe in animal rights, so you, the Polynesians, you know, get on with it, mate. Okay. They were uninterested in photos of nudes, male or female. Well, again, yeah. If nudes are nothing unusual, then no one is going to take any particular interest in them, are they? They didn't brag about sexual conquests or emphasize their sexual behavior, and it appeared to be as natural as any other activity among them. They engaged in sex when they were old enough to do so, and did so without cruelty, fetishes, or any other unnatural patterns. Okay, here's the elephant in the room, Jack. These Polynesians you describe, they're not living in your automated utopia, so therefore they must have been suffering from the effects of material deprivation. In fact, I suspect their society is probably far worse off than ours is materially, so why aren't these people engaging in sexually deviant activity and killing each other and all these other bad things that you mention in this video of yours? I mean, I suspect that you're trying to trot out some lame, noble, savage argument, which is probably a lie. It usually is, and even if it wasn't a lie, it'd pretty much contradict the entire thesis of the Venus Project's civilization through technology argument. Okay, those distortions mostly occur in modern civilization, in inverted commas, where deprivation and sexual insecurity are dominant. It's terribly worrying that we're not worthy of being called civilization, whereas these clothless, people on some island they're worthy of being called civilized. Right, yes, whatever. You know, oh, and you know what's funny? I mean, the way that every time I seem to switch on the TV or open a newspaper, there's some news about some rich celebrity getting caught with kiddie porn or having some Nazi themed sex romp or something like that. I mean, these people are usually in the top income bracket. They're not really deprived of anything. I mean, they can do pretty much whatever they want, and they live lives of luxury. I mean, is it starting to sink in? There is no link between deprivation and what we consider to be sexual perversion. The Venus Project feels that sexual preferences are byproducts of a person's experiences, and we make no judgments regarding those preferences. Presumably Jack thinks that describing certain people as sexually deviant is not passing judgment. Our aim is to find what causes deviant behaviour in society and then to scientifically design an environment that will evolve the best in human values and relationships. A better social design in a resource-based economy, which I will add isn't really an economy, will evolve productive and cooperative citizens who don't have sexual problems and hang-ups. Well, I hope you're right, Jack. I really do. If only for the dog's sake.